Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm Alyssa Rege with Becker's Hospital Review. We will begin today's webinar with a presentation and we'll have time at the end of the hour for a question and answer session. You can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar by typing them into your control panel in the space labeled Enter a Question for Staff and clicking Send. We are looking forward to hearing your questions. Additionally, in about a week following the webinar, we will be sending you a copy of the presentation to the email you used to register. At this time, it is now my pleasure to start today's webinar by introducing our moderator, Wendy Alexander. Wendy is the Vice President of Data, Analytics, and Client Services at VisitPay. Prior to joining VisitPay, Wendy served as an Executive and Credit Officer at Capital One Financial, Chief Financial Officer at Sutera LLC, and Director of Client Experience Solutions at TD Ameritrade. Wendy, I'll turn over the floor to you.
Great, thank you very much, Alyssa, and thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. I'm really pleased to introduce Liz Ward, who is the Vice President of Revenue Cycle at Inova Health System. Liz, would you like to say hello?
Hello, I'm glad to be here.
Great, thank you. And also Drew Cobb, who is the Vice President of Clinical Applications at Inova.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Great. Well, thank you, and we really appreciate Inova joining us for this webinar today. First, to set the stage for the folks on the call and on the webinar, I'd like to share with or remind folks that in our last VisitPay Becker's webinar, we really focused on the outcomes that had been seen from VisitPay at St. Luke's and Intermountain Health System. If you want to. And in that, we talked about how VisitPay's platform offering transparency, choice, and control to patients in the health system delivered on three key vectors: increasing patient satisfaction, where we've seen a 40 to 50% lift in top 2 box satisfaction; increasing payment rates, where we've seen an increase in risk-adjusted yield or patient payment rate of around 20%; and a reduction in cost to collect, where we've seen, for example, 2.5 FTEs servicing a portfolio of over 50,000 users, significantly reducing the operational cost needed to then service those users. Want to let people know that if you would like to see more about these outcomes and or see this webinar, that is available at the attached link. So today, we'd like to take a slightly different approach, and we're speaking to a health system, to Inova, that has more recently made the decision to adopt VisitPay and has been going through that implementation. And we know from a lot of recent inquiries, a lot of people are thinking about the same things, have similar questions, both about the whys, the landscape and the whys behind VisitPay, and the implementation and implementation experience. So today we are talking to Inova, who has been using VisitPay products in the scoring and analytics space for some time, but as we said, has recently decided to adopt VisitPay and is been in implementation for the last couple of months, and is actually will be going live with their initial soft launch in the very near future. So we're here to discuss the story of that journey. We appreciate Liz and Drew taking the time to reflect on their experiences and what they've learned and experienced to date. So with that, I'd love to start with Liz. I'm imagining folks are very eager to hear about your and Inova's journey and decision. Liz, you've been the VP of Revenue Cycle at Inova for about 18 months. Set the stage for us. What was the industry landscape like when you first assumed that role, and in what ways maybe were Inova and VisitPay already collaborating?
Sure. So I think we've all been paying close attention to the industry trends towards higher deductibles and cost sharing as more of the total cost of care is being shifted onto patients. So we've been expecting it, and now we're actually really seeing in our data the impact of these higher patient obligations. And in fact, it was the data from some of our current tools that allows us to see the trends affecting patients with a lot of granularity. For instance, we can look and see that we've had a significant increase in insured patients with cost sharing obligations in the $1,000 to $5,000 range. Between 2014 and 2017, we had a 33% increase in patients with obligations in that range. Conversely, for patients with obligations below $500, we saw only an 8% growth. So what we expected and what we saw in the industry, we're now really seeing here in our patient population. So we really began working with VisitPay to better understand the dynamics and that are affecting our patients, and the fact that they vary for patients depending on a lot of factors, and then really wanting to be able to interact with patients in a more individualized manner based on that information.
Great, thanks. And Liz, could you share with us a bit more, how does segmentation and perhaps scoring, but segmentation really help personalize that patient experience, and why is that important?
Sure. For us, and I'm sure for a lot of the folks on the phone, revenue cycle, we view revenue cycle as a critical part of patient experience here at Inova, and we try to view everything we do through that lens. And the segmentation and the information that we have gives us, again, a lot more information about where individual patients are in their financial life cycle of their account. So it allows us to tailor the interactions based on more relevant information rather than some of more of the blunt policies and processes that we used to have to use. I mean, for example, in our contact center, in the past, we used to prioritize contacting patients who had outstanding balances, based on things like the size of the balance or the age, without really any deeper knowledge or understanding about whether a call would be helpful or even necessary. And now with the information and the tools that we have a lot more understanding about the patients and can tailor outreach. So you can focus resources and don't reach out to patients that really don't need a call where it won't be beneficial. You also can provide assistance to those that need it, or offer assistance to those that may need it. And it also, frees up resources to spend more time on some of the complex accounts, because in this day and age, many of our patients have very complex accounts. So being able to really focus on that and with those additional resources allows us to be, as efficient and effective as you can be, at least in the contact center environment.
Excellent. So I'd love to turn then. So I think, Liz, that you've been describing really how you've used, in addition to your overall strategy, the segmentation and scoring and some of the analytics tools in your kind of what I might call the traditional call center environment. Now, perhaps to one of the questions of the hour, why VisitPay? Why the VisitPay patient portal and client-facing portal on top of that?
Sure. I think there's a number of reasons. One, I mean, clearly patients are looking for a digital solution. Many patients would prefer only to interact with us in a digital solution. Others want to have the flexibility of both. But there's certainly a demand for a digital solution, and I think that VisitPay allows Inova to have a lot of functionality that makes it it's more efficient and effective than our paper statements for our patients as well as for us. I guess a real life example, I had a patient that came to me not too long ago and was remarking to us that, they said, in order for me to understand what's happening with my account at Inova, I have to have 3 pieces of paper. I have to have your statement, I have to have the payer's EOB, and then I have to have a statement from an electronic payment portal that we were using. That VisitPay allows us to have all of that in one place. So the patient has everything from our statement. There's also the ability to have the integrated EOBs for major payers, and obviously it is the electronic payment portal. So everything is right there for them. And so I think that's a true benefit, to be able to see everything right there real time. It also has the additional functionality, so patients who prefer and have the consent of their family members can consolidate bills, and really allows patients to have more control over their account and how they see it. So I think that's a big piece of it. And the other piece is clearly around the financing. Many patients need more options to help meet their obligations. And as much as possible, it benefits them and all of us to be able to be flexible with those financial solutions. At this point, I think Inova really feels it's an imperative for us to find options to assist patients in meeting some of these higher financial obligations. And one thing I've observed is that other industries have been providing consumers with financing options for a long time and have a deep understanding of the consumer needs related to that. And I think that's something that the VisitPay team has brought to the product and continues to bring as they're developing the product. And Wendy, I don't know, you might even be in a even better position than I to talk about some of the key insights in consumer financing that you've built into VisitPay, but certainly one of the things that we feel is a benefit.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Liz, and I know folks like hearing about it from your perspective. We do aspire to bring our consumer finance background and consumer finance insights into the healthcare space to deliver better financial solutions for folks. And what we've seen are exactly the things that you're talking about, Liz, but in that industry for a longer period of time, that people have very different situations, very different needs, need different solutions. And that, frankly, most people do want to meet their financial obligations. They just need a way to do that that works for them. So they need to both understand their financial situation, understand their bills, and have tools and solutions that enable them to meet those obligations. We're thrilled to be working with Inova and others on bringing more of that to healthcare.
Yeah, and I think that really, it says it in a nutshell. Our Nova's focus on patient experience and revenues, we're requiring us to provide patients with the information and financing options that meet individualized needs within certain parameters. But I think you really need a digital platform to be able to do that kind of customization on any scale. And if you do it, and if you get it right, I think there's a real win-win there, because we can provide excellent patient experience in the revenue cycle and also have better outcomes in terms of collecting both short-term and long-term.
Yeah, excellent. Liz, I'm hoping, and I imagine some of the folks on the webinar would love to hear a bit more about that, and why implement a patient payment solution in conjunction with or in addition to your existing clinical and billing software.
Right. Well, we have an excellent vendor partner that we work with every day that provides fabulous clinical and billing capabilities. And I think VisitPay is just bringing something that's different and complementary, and that's the consumer finance perspective. And I think that's really critical when we're really working with consumers to offer them more individualized options and understand what our consumers need and provide them those options. So to be able to have both is ideal and complementary.
Great, thank you. And Drew, maybe this is an area where you could share your perspective as well. Obviously, anytime a health system chooses to implement an additional system, there's an implementation. What has that experience been like for Inova with respect to VisitPay, and how does VisitPay help?
Well, that's one of the challenges when you bring a technology from a different industry into healthcare, because healthcare is not known for being early adopters of technology. So tools that new technology from a different industry might be expecting us to have, we don't always have. So there has to be an evolution of either acquiring the tools, or B, getting the inbound vendor to help you modify to support your core platform. So things like an API and real-time exchange of data is not always native to healthcare applications. And that takes a lot of work, but it's also work that you don't want to always be relying on your vendor for. You want to be able to take ownership of the work and to be able to make it your own within your own environment, and therefore you can manage it and meet Liz's needs when she asks for changes at the last minute.
So building on that, Drew, it sounds like you anticipate making sort of ongoing configuration changes in VisitPay and elsewhere, but including VisitPay, once it's set up and integrated with the core billing system. Can you speak a little bit more to that? What that might be, what that would look like, and how you see VisitPay working in that environment?
Yeah, there's two parts to that. There's the overall patient engagement, because people use technologies in other parts of their life. Then they hit healthcare, they wonder why they don't have that same portability, or that same, as Liz was saying, go to one place for all the answers. So that's number one, to meet that changing and accelerating demand for usability and interaction with our patients. Number two is we're the second most regulated industry in the country. So being able to adjust not just to federal, but to state and county and city regulations around that exchange of data, what you present to the users and how you do it, you want to have a platform that, what I call sort of an open road that you can handle yourself. You don't want the tolls where you have to go back to the vendor and always ask for changes, and that increase your total cost of ownership. But more, it's about the flexibility. You want to be able to meet the needs that the patients want to do, so they will interact with you and be successful to meet their commitments. It's both parties meeting their commitments.
Great, thank you, thank you. You know, and kind of on that, you know, back to you Liz, as you are thinking about your vision and your strategy and creating, you know, a great financial experience for patients, including, you know, a bit of a consumer finance experience for patients. What are the things you're considering as you do that?
Yeah, I think as a start, we need to provide the information that's comprehensive and integrated as much as possible in a manner that patients can understand. And I think in healthcare, for all of us, that's something that we're always going to be working on and working to improve, because the complexity just keeps coming. And when you add, you know, the additional need to provide, you know, financing on top of you know, a maybe complex care with a complex statement, and then it's adding to the complexity of providing the information in a way that patients can understand. And I think that, you know, a digital platform allows more flexibility for us to provide information to patients, and also speed to adapt and evolve. So when we find that something works and is better for patients and provides, you know, better, you know, more easily readable format. For instance, it's far faster and easier to change the digital platform than to change the patient statement. I also think, obviously, you really need to be able to tailor offers and base things on what the individual wants and what will work for them. So one of the things that I think is great about VisitPay is that you can, as a patient, you can choose to have one financing plan for, say, a surgery that you recently had, and then you may decide you need to have a different financing plan, maybe with a shorter term, for a medical visit. And if that's what you want to do, you can do that. If you prefer to just put everything together in one, you can do that. And those are all things that the patient can do, and the patient has control over setting up with all the parameters that we set in the background. So I think that's important. You know, we clearly need to have some ability to have longer term financing options, and need to understand what that means to patients, and how to get that right, while still, you know, recognizing and covering the costs associated with longer term financing. And I think, you know, being able, again, to try new things and learn, and test in the environment, and be, you know, flexible in terms of quickly adopting things that work, and pulling back on things that don't. And being mindful of, as Drew said, that it is a regulatory environment, and you're always being careful to make sure that you're doing everything, you know, with all the different populations that you're serving. And I think the feedback, which I think, you know, we always seek, but in this digital environment, we also are going to be able to get feedback and invite feedback from consumers. So all those things are important to us as we build a consumer finance experience for patients.
Liz, you've mentioned a few times the longer term finance plans or loans, and, you know, folks recognize that there's often implications of that for days AR and reporting. Would you share with folks how you're thinking about that and how you'll be managing that in your environment? Sure.
I mean, the honest answer is when looking at the lens from patient experience, patients need the financing options, and we need to support them if we're going to be able to improve, you know, our yield. But we are making a trade-off as the AR will increase, and so really having to balance it to ensure that we do provide the longer-term financing for people, and that those that need it have access to it, but also that those that can pay do so. So I think that really is part of what our challenge is and will be. But I believe that the platforms will allow us to work with patients to learn and figure out how to best balance that.
Great, great. And could you comment a bit about, with the impending launch, how are you thinking about the sort of the deployment and specifically communicating it to users and partnering with the VisitPay team on that as well?
Sure. So right now we're just about to do our internal launch to encourage our employees to use VisitPay. We want them to set up payment plans, ensure it all works, and address any kinks. And that's pretty easy and straightforward to communicate with our employee base. On the external marketing approach, we're looking at multiple different approaches, including statement inserts and statement updates, digital marketing. And I also think that that's something that you all bring to the table in terms of really different options for the way to outreach to the patient population, which and you partner tightly with our marketing team so that we can make sure that we do it in a way that meets all of the Inova values. But I think there's a lot that you already bring to the table.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. And we are enjoying working with you on that. Question to Drew. How does this new VisitPay solution fit within your broader digital strategy and patient experience in that regard?
It's one of the first into the strategy. The strategy for our patients and for many other listeners' patients depends across the capabilities of our patients, which varies greatly. So you have to make the strategy flexible. So for those that do have access to the technology and want to be portable, you have to give that same option as well as to the ones who want to call and always have that conversation. So for us, the flexibility is key, and that's been successful for us as we work through that planning.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's switch gears just a bit. As folks know, you're just on the eve of your soft launch and then broader launch. But as you think again about the why and the journey that you're on, maybe you could speak a bit to the outcomes that you hope to achieve. So, Drew, first with you in terms of technology and elsewhere, what outcomes are you hoping to achieve with VisitPay?
The flexibility to meet the work requirements and workflow requirements to support Liz and her team.
Great. And Liz, how about you? What are the outcomes you'll be looking for?
Yeah, so you really focusing on improving patient experience throughout the revenue cycle, including providing patients with the information and tools they need to meet their financial obligations, which we believe we do that well. We'll see an improvement in collections, reduction in bad debt, and hopefully lower administrative costs.
Excellent. And a question I imagine a lot of folks would like to hear about also, what's it like working with the VisitPay team?
It's a lot of fun. It's very collaborative, but it's a lot of hard work too. And I think that that there's a lot of discovery and digging in that's allowing us to really think very, very deeply about what our patients need and what it looks like for Inova, and to learn and to develop in a collaborative environment is great.
There's also the challenge of continuous education, because as a vendor, VisitPay is coming out of a different industry, so the expectations in healthcare can be different, as I said earlier about the technologies, but also customer is different. The ecosystems here are different than at St. Luke's or wherever else. So there's not a cookie cutter. You have to have an outline, but it be flexible enough to adjust the outline depending on the ecosystem and the demands of each healthcare customer. That's been a learning curve, and that's a learning curve of any vendor that comes into this industry from another industry.
Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to turn now to some questions from the audience. We'll start first with this one. So can you tell us a bit more about the integration with the EOB?
Sure. So in a nutshell, and I'll give it from the operations standpoint, it allows us to actually take the information that the payer is remitting back to us and create, a user-friendly format and put it in the account so that the patient can see, here's my statement and here's the responses from the payer. And then even to the level of detail where we've thought through, we can have one EOB response and then we can have another EOB response. Maybe we send a late charge, and so really sequencing it and helping to explain to the patient why you got an EOB, and then, oh yes, you did get another one, and here is the sequencing and how that ultimately affects what you, the patient, owe. I don't know from a technology standpoint if anybody else wants to jump in, because we just get the gift of getting to look at it and think about it and what it means for our patients without having to leave the heavy lifting of the technology to Drew and your team.
But for the technology, that point of interaction with the customer shifts and the patient shifts to one environment, which is a plus. But for us, it's basically making sure that patient has what they need when they do go to the visit and pay environment to see what they're looking for.
Great, thank you. All right, another question from the group. With some knowledge about Inova. This question says, I understand Inova's 6 acute care facilities use the Epic EHR. Are the primary and specialty care practices, urgent care centers, and other outpatient services also on the Epic platform?
Yes.
And then the associated question, is VisitPay implemented across all of Inova, acute and ambulatory?
I would say with the vast majority, there's small pockets that are not, but for the vast majority, it's all Epic. Right?
No, but for the VisitPay, is our initial rollout towards the acute?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. So VisitPay. So as we plan our rollout, it would be across the Epic platforms because we're in SEO model.
But VisitPay being used across all the areas, care settings.
Yes.
Yeah, and Liz, why is that important?
I think kind of listening through all the different benefits that we outlined, that we want to be able to provide as much as possible a consistent experience for all of our patients and have them have the same set of flexible tools and financing options and information all in one place. So to us, that's a critical piece of trying to make the information more understandable and user-friendly, and is to consolidate and integrate all of the information that patients need to have about their experiences with Inova.
Excellent. And we've got a follow-up question that asking, does the VisitPay solution also allow a patient to do a, quote, guest checkout? In other words, the ability to make a one-time payment without logging in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. This is an interesting question, and Liz or Drew may want to comment on this. It says, is VisitPay integration with Epic tight, such as through APIs?
Work in progress. That's part of the new technologies. Our vendors, not just Epic, but other vendors, bringing the APIs into our world is something that is only within the last couple of years, as we do the Fire and Smart Fire and other options. We have also recently done API connections specific from Epic to one of the quote-unquote bolt-ons to support revenue cycles. So that evolution, as an industry, healthcare is behind on. So that's part of that issue I had about bringing new technologies from other industries into healthcare. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. And I'll just add, for the benefit of some of the audience, that the integration with VisitPay can be API based. We can also, do batch file process as well, and to accommodate the situation where health systems may not be able to do or not be ready to do an API based integration. When you say, next question, when you say financing options, are you offering outside credit options to patients?
No, we're providing it ourselves.
And could you elaborate a little bit more on that, Liz?
Sure, and if I'm interpreting the question correctly, I think, some hospitals choose to use an outside entity that might actually even take the obligation and own it, or provide a bank might provide the financing to the patient. Here, we are actually providing the financing ourselves. So we're not using an outside bank or other facility to do it. We're doing it ourselves, but we're offering extended terms and longer and shorter terms. Really kind of nominal interest just to cover the cost of carrying when the financing plan is longer, but it's all being done by Inova.
Great. And a question from the same person. How do you manage multiple payment plans at the same time for the same patient in your billing system?
And so that's only available in the VisitPay obligation. We do have an offline loan option that people can use today. It's completely done by a call center, and we can create a financing plan for someone, but that's just one financing plan, and it doesn't. If you need to add more to it, it stays as one plan. But in the digital option, patients can actually go in and select accounts and say that they want to finance, one plan and set it up within parameters that we set on the back end. It gives them a set of options on terms and minimum balances, and they can set up one financing plan, put it on one card that covers one account, and then they might choose to have a different financing plan for a different account, and they can choose to do that again, or they can choose to put it all together.
Great.
Or as I should say, we will be able to offer that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Coming very soon. Excellent. Some questions about VisitPay and Epic MyChart. So this question specifically, does VisitPay integrate with Epic MyChart, or do patients have separate logins for each site?
I know. That's part of the work in progress, because we don't want the patients to have to go to two places. But that's part of the yet to be determined development and work in progress, how that's accomplished.
But when people go into MyChart and they want to bill pay, they can click a link and it goes to their VisitPay page. Right. Or if they don't have MyChart, they can go straight through to VisitPay just by clicking a link on our website.
Yeah, that's right. So Drew, when you say work in progress, we're working towards the a single sign-on option where someone can log into MyChart and then click over to VisitPay without an additional login. Which just for the benefit of the audience, we do have live at St. Luke's today. Which one?
Other questions for us?
Yeah. Hang on one sec. How much of this question? How much of the interaction with payments happening post-service versus point of care or during registration for a visit? Is any of the balance or amount due being driven by estimates?
Yeah, I think it's a great question and somewhere we're trying to go and very focused on. Right now, we do estimates and we do collect upfront, but we don't offer, other than a very small 3-payment option, we don't offer true financing plans upfront. This is our own offline technology that is after adjudication through insurance, and Visit Pay, when it goes live, will be also after adjudication. But we're very focused on being able to do that because we have a lot of investment and focus in providing patients with estimates as part of patient experience, helping them to understand what their obligation is going to be, and then really, moving as quickly as we can to being able to provide financing for patients up front would be, I think it would be great and something we need to do. We do have, and we're working with Visit Pay and our own legal team to make sure we understand and meet all of the rules and regulations that apply when you're making a front-end payment plan on an estimate basis, to make sure we get that all right. But that's somewhere we want to go.
Great. So a question similar to one earlier, but we have someone asking, is this a patient loan program, and is your patient AR sold to Visit Pay?
No. So that's what I was trying to say. It is, yes, we are providing financing options for patients so that they can pay their balance over a longer period of time. And those terms vary depending on what the length of time that they're asking for. But we carry all of that on our balance sheet. So we are not selling our balances to Visit Pay. I know that there are entities out there that do that, but for us right now, we are carrying that. We're carrying all of that. Really, that AR, the expanded AR, is a notes payable on our books.
Okay, great. And on another topic, do you plan to pass pending insurance balances to patients and balances in appeal to patients so that the patient sees the efforts made on their behalf, so that when the patient balances drop, they are not surprised by delayed balances?
Right now, we don't do that, although it's an interesting opportunity. We do, and this is not part of what the Visit Pay platform is doing, but we do when we have, complex insurance situations, we will bring patients in and get them involved and get them on calls and to work with the insurance company, which I'm sure a lot of other folks on the phone do as well. But right now, we are still in a model that we say we wait until we have finalized the adjudication with the insurance company before we pass the obligation on to the patient.
Great. Question about, and I'm going to presume they mean in your previous scoring and segmentation implementations, or maybe perhaps thought about future for Visit Pay. But the question is, have you had a chance to measure the percentage decrease of dollars going to bad debt, or do you have a projection of how much you think bad debt dollars will decrease as a result of the new technology and processes?
I think that's a fair question. But not sure one I can answer since we haven't moved forward. What we've done on the flip side is really measure how it has increased, how bad that has increased without more flexible solutions, and we're working across many different areas. This is one very important one, but we're doing other things in terms of interacting with patients on the front end and patient estimates and making sure that all of our RTE and all the other things that we need to do are also in place. But we have, and we can definitely see, as I'm sure others can, that the increase in bad debt for the balance after insurance patients has grown in double digits over the last few years, and really just a direct outcome to the fact that the obligations for patients have increased quickly, and all of these different investments we're making, including visit pay, are ways to help provide patients with the ability to meet their obligations, because as you said at the beginning, it's true, patients do want to pay, but some of these obligations are just very large, and it's hard to expect people to be able to pay these very large bills in cash up front.
Got it. Yeah. Another question, could you please speak more about the additional patient account criteria that is considered, or additional visibility now available to determine your next level of patient outreach, in addition to traditional patient balance and age of account targeting?
Sure. So I think what the person is asking is really, how do you understand, what are we doing with it as we understand more and more about what individuals need, and how do we think about how to reach out to patients? So, I mean, based just on the information we have, including this just historical information about our patients, it allows us to think about timing of when to do outreach. It also allows us to think about presenting offers for patients of, financial assistance, because everyone on the phone has, financial assistance programs and plans, and allows us to really, think about spend putting more resources and time into looking at some of the complexities in some of the accounts that have, multiple insurances and multiple occurrences, and bringing that information to the patients when we do outreach.
Great. Liz, we've gotten one question here it's probably more for me, but there's a question here asking about whether or not VisitPay integrates with Cerner, and the answer to that is yes, and that VisitPay can integrate with multiple billing systems, not only across with different health systems, but also within a health system as well. So, Liz, back to you. More payment plan related questions, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest in this. No pun intended. What is the range of interest rates that you're offering on your terms?
Well, we're still vetting that and thinking through what that right solution is. Right now, we offer one flat interest rate for MediCredit. What we're looking to do with VisitPay, which I think it allows us to do it more flexibly, is really for have a no interest for 0 to 6 months, and have a little bit for 6 to 12, and a little bit more, all just to make sure that the only purpose at all being to just cover the costs of the carrying costs, really.
Yeah, and Liz, could you just elaborate on that a little bit? We get a lot of questions about that, in terms of interest, and whether or not to charge interest, and why. How have you thought about that, and how has Inova thought about that? I think folks would love to hear about that.
Well, I think, really what I just shared is really what our philosophy and thought process is that it's in healthcare, we are trying to provide for our patients the ability for them to meet their obligations, and the interest really is just to cover the carrying costs that are a part of providing longer-term financing, and that's really how we think about it, and how we structure it is to ensure that we cover the cost, but no more, and that as you have longer term plans, there's also more costs, both in just the carrying costs, and then you have a slightly higher, default rates, and that's really how we think about it.
Great. And one more, you've spoken to this a little bit, but Liz or Liz and Drew, how will you get VisitPay, out to patients and the link to VisitPay? Is that through MyChart, through the website? Will you use other channels as well?
I'm not sure what other channels would be. As people, we make it known that it's available as they enter into that stage of the repayment process. If they're currently a MyChart user, they'll be directed to it. If they're not, we'll make the effort to sign them up to it because they gain other benefits by that interaction. I'm not sure if we intend to have them solely go directly to the VisitPay. That will depend on the type of engagement with the patient.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll just add, depending on the question, that in addition to the upfront, once someone is signed up in VisitPay, VisitPay will also communicate through folks through email. They can opt into text messaging to get notifications on their account status, payment status, et cetera. So. With that, we see that there are still a bunch of questions in queue, but so I'm sorry.
This one.
Sorry, one final question. Do patients opt out of paper statements in VisitPay, and can you share your thinking on that as well?
Yes, absolutely. I think people can opt in if they want to have both. But I think the general standard is that they would opt out, and then we wouldn't be sending a paper statement. But anybody that wants one can have both. From my understanding, the folks that already are up and running, again, because we're not up and running yet, very, very, very few people actually want the paper statement if they're in the digital environment. But you can provide both.
Great. Just a few more questions. There's one here that says, and Liz, I can take this, and Drew, if you'd like, but it says, do you have to provide truth in lending documents to your patients when they enter this program?
Sure, I can answer that if you'd like. So we are providing all the documentation that you need for both Truth in Lending and Electronic Funds Transfer Act. I think that, there's actual model agreements that you all provide, but of course it's our patients and our responsibility. So we took those and worked with counsel to make sure they meet all of the requirements, and they do. And I think that's one of the nice things about a digital environment is that you can provide those efficiently and get them all signed. And when we're doing it either on the back end here through our call center, there's just a lot more paper back and forth to make sure that you have provided all the necessary documents and got all the signatures and disclosures. It's more cumbersome, but of course we do it every time, but it's much more efficient in a digital environment.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to kind of move towards conclusion here. First, say thank you again very much to both Liz and Drew for taking the time to share their perspectives and share their journey with this audience today. I'd like to remind or announce to folks we have an exciting event planned at the Becker's annual meeting in April. There will be a powerful agenda and speakers, and it's really an opportunity to dig deeper into the space of patient financial health and talk to other peers who are doing this. So space is limited, so if you are interested, please follow the link on this agenda and let us know if you're interested. And thank you again, not only to Liz and Drew, but to our audience and all those who took the time to listen today. We appreciate it.
Great. And with that, I would
Thank
like
you.
to formally end our presentation. I would like to thank VisitPay and Inova for their excellent presentation and to our audience for participating today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to having you join in for future webinars.
Thank you.
Thank you.